We're back with another episode of the RepVue Podcast. We've got Nick Day, the VP of Go-to-Market Strategy at Elastic, and we've got Kevin Keeney, who's the RVP of Federal Sales at Elastic. Great to have you both, and appreciate you hopping on, and would love to hear a little more about you both and go from there.
Hey, Darin. Hey, great to be here. I joined Elastic 6 months ago, back in January. I've held a bunch of leadership roles in different high-tech companies, Cohesity, Veritas, Dell, Hitachi, just running different parts of the business. And the opportunity to come on board here in a hyper-growth company, just to help build up the strategy as to where we're going to move the needle over the next few years and take the business, which is nearing $1 billion in ARR, and get to $2 billion within the next few years. Just an exciting opportunity to join a rocket ship and further accelerate it. You know, Kevin, you've been here for a few more years than I have.
Yeah, for sure. Kevin Keeney here. Glad to be here. Super excited about Elastic, and I've been here coming up on 5 years, which says a lot. I've kept up my enthusiasm. I've been able to move from a couple of different positions. I currently support our DoD business, but previously I was in a global overlay role for about 2 years, focusing on our cybersecurity and our go-to-market. And then I had the opportunity to move into rep role and then into a sales leadership role. It's been awesome to be a part of a company that gives you that flexibility within career, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more later. I live in the Midwest. We're distributed by design. Nick, where do you live?
I live in Montreal, and I work for our CRO, who's based in Jersey. My head of enablement is in the US. My head of enablement delivery is based in Whistler, BC. Great place, by the way, to have somebody on your team if you're into skiing. Our finance VPs in Switzerland. I mean, it's such a diverse and globally distributed team. I think one of our philosophies here is just hire the best talent, regardless of where they live, and just bring them into the business. And I think we've been like that really from the start, which is pretty unique here at Elastic, and actually spreading globally now.
Hey, Kevin, what was it originally attracted you to the company, to Elastic?
So my history as a very technical person, building, designing data centers, running individual technologies, entering in pre-sales, started a couple of companies which were very technical in their focus. Through my journey. So I came to Elastic because I was using it in the US military at the time. I was wearing a uniform and was doing really cool stuff, hunting for bad guys. A little bit before US Cybercom was stood up, but that was my background. I've been doing cyber since the 90s. Before it was called cyber, it was called information warfare. But anyway, so I found Elastic, this little search engine, to be amazing at sifting through data, and I was just happened to be looking for evil. This was many years before Elastic even thought about security as a use case. I then was at a Fortune 200 running several security teams there, and continued to find value in what Elastic was doing. I was just super excited about how disruptive this was. It's very different than any other tooling or security things I had used, and that's kind of it. That sold me. I fell in love with the technology, and then just ended up sort of finding my way to work at the company.
Product. So product market fit, right? Exactly. So most of the RepVue kind of community is evaluating roles, and we always push them, go really deep on product market fit, right? And you had a front row seat, right? And so it's almost like a cheat code to know as a user. I always love hearing that I was a user of the product and I loved it so much that I decided to go sell there, right? There's no better validation of the product market fit than like, man, I literally sat in your seat. And I'm sure, correct me if I'm wrong, that being a user sitting in that seat has played a key role in being successful in sales and selling that solution. Any anecdotes on that?
Yeah, I've heard it often said that I have sort of a bona fides in front of customers, or authenticity. They trust me maybe a little bit more because I can kind of dive down maybe at a little bit more technical level sometimes than maybe peer salespeople, but I'm not sure about that. Less about me, more about our pre-sales solution architects. It's incredible how many of them used the product, used our solutions prior to joining Elastic, much like you said, and they have that opportunity to be that trusted advisor around solving data problems and pain points and search problems for different companies. And again, I think that always helps for sure. So
I've seen that a lot across. I have friends that are sales engineers, pre-sales, that if you look at the orgs that they're in and the previous roles that they've had, they are very successful when they've used the product. So I think you guys are, it's a great anecdote. And it's probably a confidence booster for your AE team to know that they've got a pre-sales team that it's previous users as well.
Especially the newer, as Nick is here growing this sales organization rapidly globally, it is got to be a comfort to know, okay, I'm going to come in here, I got to learn this technology, but I got an amazing technical business partner with me who, probably has used the product in production, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible when you see the user base out there. I mean, one of the things that attracted me to Elastic when I came on board was customers love our products. Like, we've been really focused on our customer base and developers. We've nurtured our open source community, and the brand there is really strong. Like, we've really helped grow that, and it's helped contribute to this meteoric growth that we've been going through.
That's great. And that leads to customer stories, which then feeds more customers being interested, and it all just creates a flywheel for growth.
Absolutely.
What maybe I'll send this one to Nick, and then it's going to be specific for Kevin too on the federal side. But when you guys, Nick, when you guys are hiring sales broadly, hiring for the sales team, what do you look for on the team? Maybe characteristics or DNA?
So you look at a company that's grown rapidly, and for those who aren't very familiar with Elastic, we ingest data from all sorts of different sources. Just think of your laptop, and I'm just going to kind of take a little pivot to get to that answer. But think of your laptop; it slows down. Control-Alt-Delete. You try to figure out exactly what application's slowing it down. You kill it, then suddenly everything works. Now imagine you have 10,000 laptops, 500 access points, 1,000 applications, and your CEO calls and says, hey, our e-commerce engine is slowing down. What's causing it? How do you figure that out? Well, with all the data that we gather, we're able to quickly assess what is slowing things down, and then be able to help people make the right decisions, and also even be predictive about it with AI and ML. Now you start thinking about what's happening from a security perspective. It's those same machines. You're gathering data from those same machines where the bad actors are coming in and trying to infiltrate your environment. So we're seeing the observability in the security spaces really converge. So when we're looking for people, at least now, our journey to get us to where we are today has been really just developing. And we've been really strong in log analytics and APM and synthetics and serverless. And we've really been pivoting to security in the last few years very successfully. Having somebody who has that entrepreneurial spirit that's able to come in and look at, hey, how can we solve our customers' problems? Because our technology can do quite a bit, but it's really going in and adapting it to our customer lens. So somebody who can really go in and empathize with the customer, understand what problems they're really trying to solve, and quantify the value, and then be able to show how our technology can help support that. That's key. And I know it sounds like what a lot of companies are looking for, but somebody who can come in and really see this opportunity. We're talking about a business that's growing 40% year over year. Our cloud business is 80% year over year growth. It's hyper growth. It's how do we go in and understand really what pains the customer's feeling? How can we address them? And then really be able to map that, and not just land and sell that solution, but then really see things through, help the customer realize that value. And when you look at our source code, which a lot of companies talk about ethics and their code of values, we really live by our source code. Source code are things like home dinner. Everybody lives and works remotely. So being able to make time for personal things, coming as you are, I spoke about different people on my team being based around the world. We've got a lot of diversity within the organization, and that really bringing your authentic self is really key. But I think one of the most important things is humble and ambitious. We have a really, really good culture here. I've never seen a culture like this in a company. So we want to hire people that are driven, ambitious, goal-oriented, and entrepreneurial, and get things done. but not at any expense. We're not looking for those lone wolves that can kind of come in and they'll do anything at any cost, because that just kills your culture. And Kevin, I'm sure you've interviewed people like that in the past, where you've got somebody that, wow, they're hitting their results, they're getting things done, but they're just going to destroy the sort of like the spirit of the team.
Yeah, 100%.
Quick follow-up on that, Nick. You mentioned some of the basics of understanding pain and delivery. Like, do you all train on a specific sales methodology, or do you have kind of an in-house kind of ascribed methodology that's kind of that we would know the name of or anything like that? Or how do you think about sales? Because you're right. A lot of companies do, hey, we want them to understand the customer. They want them to understand the pains. We want them to show value, et cetera. Right? Like a lot of solution selling centers around that. How do you think about specific methodologies, or have you kind of built that in-house?
Great question. And, as the company's grown, I mean, we've hired over 1,000 people in the last year. I mean, the company has grown very quickly. You bring in a lot of talent from different companies. And I think, speaking to salespeople out there, everybody's gone through multiple sales training courses, whether it's spin selling, challenger. I mean, there's so many different courses out there. We adopted MedPick as a sales methodology. And the reason we wanted to standardize on things is, Ryan and Darin and Kevin, if I were to say, hey, let's go to a football game, if I'm talking to somebody from Europe, they're thinking soccer. If I'm talking to you guys based in the US, you're thinking NFL with 4 downs. I'm in Canada, and our CFL has 3 downs, bigger field. I mean, we're all talking about football, but we're all thinking different things. So having everybody aligned to one common definition so that we're all working and aligned to the same metrics makes a big impact. So we made the decision to roll out MedPick earlier this year, just so that we can focus on qualifying for the right opportunities and then executing, because we want our reps to be as successful as possible, closing as much business as possible, and making as much money as possible. So by qualifying early and focusing on the ones that we know we can win, that makes all the difference in the world.
MedPick's also great for setting up retention as well, and handoffs with CS and making sure everything's captured, and love it.
Absolutely.
How does that play into the hiring process? Obviously MedPick is a bonus, I would think, but do you consider that? Do you look for that, or you're just all about they probably have some sense of solution selling experience, so we'll get them aligned with MedPick in our methodology versus, hey, we're only hiring somebody that's already been trained. How are you thinking about that?
And Kevin, I'd love you to add some color after this, but when I've interviewed people for different roles, whether it's a rep role all the way through to a VP level role, you want somebody to be able to come in with, let's call it enterprise mentality. Elastic as a company has been around for 12 years. We IPO'd 3 years ago, and we've been growing quickly, but we still have very much of a startup culture in many ways, very agile, very nimble. But the way we're going to get from almost $1 billion in ARR to $2 billion over the next few years is really to bring in more of an enterprise mentality. So understanding sales methodology, be able to jump in and say, look, I know I've got to do this. There's standards around forecasting and pipeline calls and deal reviews and planning. You talk about planning. If you're going to take your family to Disney World for a vacation, you don't just buy tickets and show up. I mean, you do that, and if you've got little kids, you're in for a rough day. You want to make sure you're planning your day. Which ride am I going to do first? Booking some fast passes and everything, so you make the most, you get the most return on your investment. Well, we want reps that have done that understand the importance of doing that, so they can plan their time out properly. So in the interview process, we ask a lot around, like, what have they done? How have they planned their time? How have they ensured that they're closing the right deals? And how do they fail out quickly of deals that they shouldn't be involved in? And a question I often like to ask reps or even leaders in an interview is, hey, Ryan, you get an invite from Darin. Darin just closed the biggest deal of his career, and he's inviting you out for drinks on Saturday night and saying he's buying for everybody.
You're definitely buying. I know that much.
Yeah.
He's definitely buying. So you guys are out for drinks, and everybody's having an amazing time and sharing war stories. It comes to you, Ryan, and it's like, hey, Ryan, what's the biggest win you ever had? The one that you're most proud of in your sales career. And it's a question I like to ask people, because what it does is, first of all, if somebody doesn't lean in with passion, first of all, they can't find a win. That's a big flag.
Yeah.
If somebody kind of just says, well, I closed the deal and it was okay, and it's very ho-hum, the passion's not there, that's another flag. But if somebody kind of lights up, and I love to see that flicker when they light up and say, oh, a few years ago, I was working on this deal and this happened and we did this. You see the passion. But what it does is, first of all, what did they close? How do they tell a story in terms of articulating the deal, how they got it done, why they won? It shows me passion. It shows me drive. So that one question has been probably the greatest question I've ever asked in my leadership interviews and rep interviews, because you get a chance to really see the entire individual and how they perform, and it tells a lot about somebody.
Love that.
Kevin, any perspectives on your end? I mean, from having interviewed and brought people into Elastic, like what do you look for?
Yeah. Well, thanks. Enjoyed listening to you, Nick. It's great to hear your perspective. Having, you have a lot of industry experience, been in the last 6 months, but I don't disagree. It's like, we're definitely growing up from the startup model, and some people are like, oh, it's becoming more bureaucratic or whatever. I would say it's a lot easier now to know where to get the resource you need to close a deal. And that wasn't always the case. You just had to navigate and feel your way through the org to get some things done and processes. So I've actually enjoyed the maturing we've been doing over the last 3 years, I would say, since we IPO'd, definitely just little by little, getting more structured and organized and know where to do things. And so actually, I'm really happy with where we're at and how we're changing. And that's okay. It's just part of growth, right? Especially hyper growth. To circle back a touch on, what I'm looking for, I think humble is really important to me. Willingness to learn, maybe said another way. Elastic's a really disruptive technology. You have to first be humble enough to learn a little bit about it and understand why we're so disruptive in the market. That's key. For me, another thing is really understanding your customer. If you're in the financial sector, really understanding what their needs are, what they're working on, what broad things are happening, what are the pain points and struggles, what are the things that the CIOs and CTOs are saying, right? If you're in the military, right, you're in the Army, you really got to know your Army customer, what's going on with them with the budget, what are the key investments they're making, right? So that is really important for me, because really Elastic sales professionals are helping their customer along their journey with Elastic, is the way I look at that, right? So sort of, whether they downloaded it free, they spun up a free cloud trial, or someone internally said, hey, we're starting to solve problems with this, we should meet with them and learn more. From that point forward, a salesperson just sort of getting the right resource in front of them, right? Getting them a demo of what they've asked for, getting them an architecture review done. But a salesperson is really kind of guiding their way through discovering the challenges that need to be overcome, the ROI the customer's looking for, the mission impact they're looking for, depending on where you're selling. So those are a couple of the things that sort of really stick out to me. Obviously, there's so many intangibles in this business, as you all know, but those are 3 big ones for me.
Love it.
That sounds like more command of the message, maybe, when you think about MedPick versus command of the plan, especially knowing the Army customer and the vernacular, maybe.
Yeah, language is key. And again, if you're selling pharmaceuticals, you got to know your customer's language. So that's key for me in interviewing, right? No matter what role, it's, do you really understand your customer? If you understand them, you're going to quickly build rapport and relationship. And this is about relationship, just like any company. You're building lifelong friendships when you're in sales, and I think that's something that all of us enjoy who are sellers.
We talk a lot about how interviewing and going through that process is very similar to obviously a sales process, right? And one thing you mentioned was being humble, and I think this is something a lot of salespeople could take away, is the ability to balance confidence and being humble and being confident in the process, right? Because I think what I took from what you said there was, like, Elastic's very disruptive, right? There's a lot of things. If you're coming in new and cold, you just don't know some of this stuff. You're not a product expert. You're not we've all seen it interviewing tons of people, which is they think they might be a product expert, right? But there's so much that they don't know. And I think that's a really key point, is for that sales pros, I think, listening to this can take away, not just if you're interested in getting into Elastic, but in any interview process, is how do you manage to balance knowing that you don't know a lot and being humble when your natural your natural instinct is to exude confidence. And I think you can do the same and apply the same methodology to a sales process, which is you're not an expert in your customer yet because you haven't worked there. Maybe you have, if you've been in the Army, but, so balancing that. So it's a great point. I love the, the humble point that you made there.
Humble with inherent curiosity. Some of the best interviews I've had with folks come and they say, hey, I've done some research on Elastic, and wow, I didn't know that you guys did this and this, but I don't really understand this component. Like, can you tell me more? And what it does, it shows like I don't expect people to come on board and be experts on our technology during an interview. But what I do expect is for somebody, it's always a two-way interview. You are looking to trust the next few years of your career with us. So if it's just trying to show, hey, this is what I can do, but there's no kind of two-way, well, tell me more about this. What's your strategy? Tell me more about your partner ecosystem, or what are you guys using from a sales methodology perspective? You see that people are leaning in, they want to understand how we do things. I love that. And oftentimes the interviews will go over the allocated time because you just lose track and you have like a really good conversation. And those are the ones where I feel like folks are almost like the best fit for an organization.
Yeah, 100%. I got to add something to humility real quick. The other thing about humility is not just the tech piece, like, hey, willing to learn the disruptive technology, which is the angle I sort of was talking about. But I could speak about humility a lot. But the key one is selling is no longer you as a sales rep, I'm going to sell the thing. Selling is a team sport. Like, let's just be honest. We have sales development reps, we have inside reps, we have pre-solutions architects, we have customer success managers, we have consulting posts, we have training. You just have this army of people, and the salesperson is truly a quarterback nowadays in modern selling. It's a team approach. If they're not humble, they're like, I can do it all, type A personality. And that is just it doesn't work anymore. Maybe it did before I got into sales, but I don't think it works today. You gotta have the humility to be a part of a team and value the members around you's expertise and what they bring to the deal to help get it closed and have a customer be successful.
Yep.
Well, it's funny. We just onboarded a new digital marketer on our team who didn't have a ton of sales background. So I was using the football analogy of the AE being the quarterback and the offensive line being the SDRs and the wide receivers being the solutions engineers, et cetera. And like, he has a football background. So like that, trying to speak his language, and it hit pretty well. So it's good to hear that's working.
Storytelling is so key. I think most people here have had kids or know of kids. Kids love stories and adults love stories. That's why we go to the movies. If you are a good storyteller, you will be successful in sales because you can stick. And it's getting an understanding of the technology, getting an understanding of the customer's business, and then being able to tell a story of how it can help them and how it can help them progress. If you can do that with humility, those come apply. We are hiring, and we are hiring fast. I've never seen a company hire so quickly as Elastic, and the talent here has been amazing.
So I know we probably have a couple other topics too, but just to sound like that, what we've heard over the last few minutes, right? Humility, super important. I'm also a huge fan of intellectual curiosity for the exact reasons that you mentioned, right? You know what you don't know. You want to learn the product. And frankly, we talked early on about product market fit, right? Like, it shows that you're doing your diligence. Can I sell this? Can I understand this product? Can I sell this product? Do I believe that the market for this product is strong and that I can be successful in there? So intellectual curiosity during the interview process, to me, is diligence on product market fit. And so I'm highly interested in people that want to know that they can succeed. They don't want to come and not succeed. So again, humility, intellectual curiosity, a couple of things that are really high on the list at Elastic. So think about those as you ready your application for a sales role at Elastic.
Which I think hiring managers should think about that as the DNA of that should carry over into the discovery that goes into sales calls with prospects and customers. Because if you're doing it in the interview process, there's no reason you shouldn't be doing it when you're talking to prospects.
Exactly.
Well said.
So I guess that's a good segue into how are you getting candidates and what does the interview process look like?
So, we're getting candidates like any company, referrals. Referrals from different folks, as we're hiring and we're hiring fast. different people come in, you cross-pollinate, you get a good culture, and we get a lot of references. But we're also getting a lot of people that are applying, just given the velocity of roles. A lot of people wonder, if I just apply online, does anybody look at it? What I can tell you is we have a world-class recruiting team. I mean, some of the best I've ever worked with. And when people apply online, it just gets folks into the system. And right away, there's usually a quick screening call, just to have a discussion on, why are you applying? Like, do you have the right background? Like, culturally, are you right for, where we're going? But from an interview process, typically starts with our recruiting team. And then you'll have a panel of 4 or so people that will interview for, first of all, is this person, right for Elastic? And we talked about like the culture and our source code and the things that are important. Is this person going to fit in within the organization? Do they have the right skill set and the right background? And are they coming on board for the right reasons? And then we started to incorporate also a bit of a bar raiser concept, in terms of somebody that is independent of the direct hiring team, that'll just look at, is this person going to help raise the caliber of the team? Well, I love the concept of, hey, if I joined the company 6 months ago, would I be able to join a year from now, just as the talent keeps creeping up? And that's just part of evolution. We want to continue to bring great talent on board. And what I've seen is great talent attracts even better talent.
Love it. Love it. Kevin, any other perspective?
I have brought a ton of my professional friends to Elastic over a 5-year time frame. That is for sure. And some of the ways that happens is organically. I'm just excited about working here. I love it here, and I've always loved it here. And that is contagious. And people are like, "Hey, opening ever comes up, let me know." So sometimes it's accidental. You're having a beverage or just talking about something at work that you're excited about. Elastic, I worked for 2 Fortune 100 best places to work, in my career. 2 of them. They're great places. I literally say this all the time. Elastic is 10 times better than either of those. As far as how they take care of you, benefits, culture, the technology, the people, I don't know. It just, I'm in love with this company and have been since I got here, and it hasn't changed yet. And that then spurs other conversations. So that's just a very me perspective. I think Nick has the global perspective of how recruiting works, how you get them in the door. But excited to talk about how the process has changed. What it was like when I went through my interview 5 years ago and what it's like today. I think that has changed a lot. So if we want to talk about that, that'd be a topic I'm interested in for sure.
And just real quick, one takeaway I took from that comment was the Fortune top 100 best places to work may or may not be just a marketing ploy, but we'll save that for another discussion.
Might be pay to play.
Kevin did hit on something though, in terms of this company is very, very focused on people, things that I've seen happen. We talk about shut it down days. So on top of PTO that people get when they come on board here, we close down the entire company 2 days a month. So almost like every other Friday, we shut it down. And this isn't just hey, we're shutting it down, but everybody's really working. You get hundreds of emails. Like the entire company shuts down because we understand that in the last few years, work has gotten more intense. You might have sick family members, you might have kids at home running around. There's so much going on. It gets really intense, and staring at a screen as we are right now is, you do 8 hours of this, 9 hours of this, it can be pretty burning or pretty draining. So getting to the end of the week and knowing that you've got a 4-day work week every other week, and this isn't something we just spun up this year. We've been doing this for 2.5 years. So as more companies and more countries are even starting to adopt 4-day work weeks, this is something that we've been living for a few years. And just personally, I've loved it because you can go really intense and then just get a chance to get a breather and even just catch up on some reading and stuff around the house.
Note that, Ryan.
So I have mixed feelings sometimes about the 4-day work week being in sales, right? Where is your quota lowered by the days that you're not in the office? And so it's not so much that I don't believe that people need time to decompress. and do those things. It's more so that I worry that in some cases it could be actually a burden on some salespeople. So it's a nuanced topic that for sales specifically that I think sometimes the company policy can kind of overlook that aspect of things. So it's just something that I think a lot about, right?
I think it's a mixed bag, that's nuanced, right? I have reps that maybe have never experienced that a chill culture, a down culture, whatever, the whole idea of a shutdown, and they can't do it. Like, they're working on the shut it down day. It's just who they are, and they don't know how to turn it off. And we get that. We understand who those people are. And then I've seen people make the journey to starting to ease into it. Like, oh, I can be more effective, or maybe I can just work for an hour or two in the morning, do some administrative tasks, and I actually can kind of take a long weekend and hit the golf course. Maybe I do it with a customer on a Friday, but I don't feel guilty about golfing on the Friday with that customer or whatever. Everyone finds their balance. And then there's others who are just like, no, I can straight up take off this day. Because part of it is because the inbox doesn't fill as much either. Like, that sounds weird, or the Slack messages don't pile up as much. So the more people do it, the easier it gets a little bit. But good account reps, good salespeople know how to plan well. And we publish these dates almost a year in advance, or about a year in advance. I know that I have them all the way out to December of this year right now. So then I can plan around it. My reps can plan around it. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I love it.
All right. So sold. So Darin, once we hit $1 billion in ARR, then I'm in.
Yeah. Well, we got to keep Elastic help Elastic with sales hiring. Get there.
I'm in. Yeah. Chip away.
This is a fun one. What's a candidate that you've had in the interview process that you thought just crushed it, and then for whatever reasons didn't end up getting the job?
I'll share just one high level, and maybe Kevin has a story. But I remember interviewing somebody early on that checked all the boxes. Right experience, coming from somebody within our competitive space, very, very driven. And there were a few flags that set off, like when we went, at least during the interview, in terms of how they were and just how aggressive they were. And then in some of the reference checks, really were able to kind of connect a few dots that this person really got things done, but left like a lot of wake turbulence in their path. And as much as you want to do that, like you don't want to destroy your culture. So that ended up being a no, because that, unfortunately, I mean, the person would have had a lot of talent, but you can't do it at any expense. I mean, Kevin, what about you?
I will say I find it rare that we're up until the very last, kind of touch point and then saying no. I feel like we figure that stuff out earlier in the interview process. Our interview tends to end in sort of a role-playing kind of capstone panel, which that has changed over the years, and I really like where we're at now, which is Nick had hit on it. It's sort of like, tell us your great deal. Tell us all about your most recent win. And that has changed the interview process, the end of it, sort of the kind of final thing. But definitely the ones that I think get weeded out are the ones that the challenges is the lone wolf personality, I'll call them super type A's, where it's all about them, non-team sellers. And maybe you find that out through reference or referral, or somebody said, where you just pick up on nuances that it's kind of a lot of I, a lot of me, a lot of those sort of things tend to be the number one filter, I think, for most of us at Elastic. I'm going to apply that broadly, because I think it's not just my perspective. I've kind of seen that as we sort of huddle after an interview and chat about, hey, what went wrong with that candidate? More often than not, it comes down to me monsters. Yeah,
the ones that talk about themselves in the third party. Nick's good at doing this. Nick's good. You could quickly kind of flag those early on.
Yeah, you're out.
I think your question, going back earlier, Nick, of tell me about your biggest success, weeds a lot of this out, because it'll tell you what other people were brought in. Were you a quarterback just running the ball down the field the whole time, or were you actually throwing it and handing it off, et cetera?
Such a multifaceted question. I mean, it really covers like collaboration, storytelling.
Yep.
It's fascinating. And I encourage everybody just to even ask that question, to some of their peers and colleagues. It's always interesting to kind of hear somebody's journey.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one for reps to flip on managers too. It's what's the most successful, or how do you make reps successful, or what has your most successful rep done? How did you help them? Things like that.
It's a good point.
Flip.
Like, I know you and I had chatted earlier about like ramp, because you join a new company, and as a new hire to a company, you come out. I mean, you're dangerous because you're highly motivated, but very unknowledgeable on the company. So you just want to find a way to kind of get into the trenches and start selling. So we look at ramp very seriously here, and you can't just come in and enable somebody. You got to hire the right person with the right contacts for the right industry in the right territory at the right time. Do you want to hire somebody that's more of a white space rep versus an enterprise farming rep? You got to make sure you're hiring the right person. But then as that person comes on board, you need to give them the right enablement. So giving them the right training, the right coaching and mentoring. And we've got great mentoring for the first 90 days just to get people really accelerate into the company, continue to invest there. But then if you do all that and you just put them into a completely cold territory with no business, you just kind of create a new territory, give all the good stuff to somebody else, you bring them into nothing. I mean, then it takes them a lot longer to get successful. So you want to bring them into a warm territory. And then finally, a pivotal piece is our first line sales leaders. That person has got to provide the new hire a lot of mentoring and coaching, help them get the talk track and get a sense of like how to navigate the system, how to create a deal, how to get things done, and just sort of the anatomy of getting a deal done. Now you bring those four things together and ramp time just decreases. And what that does, it allows our new hires to be successful sooner. So they're contributing, they feel proud about that, but they're also making money earlier. And some of our best reps are starting to hit that within their first quarter or two very quickly.
Yeah. Do you think call recordings help with ramping as well?
I think it depends. There's when you start looking at some of the more junior sales roles, when you're looking at SDRs, when you're looking at inside reps or SMB reps, I think it's good because these are typically some of the newer sellers within the organization, and they're high velocity sales. So you want to quickly provide that feedback. When you're starting to talk about like the more seasoned enterprise and global reps, that's where a lot more of the manager involvement and sitting down on some of the calls makes more of an impact.
Yeah.
We call it call shadowing, right? I'll bring someone new in, but even technical people, right? Pre-sales engineers will often do shadows, but I've done a lot of shadows. If I'm bringing a new rep, I'm traveling with that rep for a while, or I'm having maybe a global account manager travel with that rep, or even a peer. Maybe they're going to split an account a little bit as they're getting warmed up in that territory, something like that. But you got to watch someone do the walk in this business, I think. There's a lot of ways to do that. My favorite, honestly, is roll my sleeves and get in the field. It's what I love doing anyway. So it's just great. You're kind of training people out in the field. You get to know them too. After the meeting, you get to do that AAR, which I'm a big fan of, after action review, the parking lot discussion. Hey, what went right? What went wrong? What do you think we could have done differently in that? What's the one piece of information we didn't get that we should have? Right? What is the most successful part of that conversation? All the things, right? I love having those conversations, makes me better. It also sets the stage for being a learner, which is super important for a rep being successful, is constantly striving to get better. How do you do it? After every call, after every key meeting, focus on getting better, right? So anyway.
Spot on.
Love it. Love it. So we see some prime examples of professional development in action for the team there. So I see a lot of applicants for the Elastic roles. That's great. Great. So a few of the takeaways, might have one or two more questions, right? So looking to get a role at Elastic, curious, humble, team player. You might get surprised with the question about what's the best deal you've ever closed. So be prepared for that, and take ownership of that and think of a good one. And so that's another especially if you've been selling for a while. So
we do give them, I don't know if it's 24 hours, 40, we give them a warning on that. We kind of say, hey, you're going to do a panel. We're going to have a couple of people in the room. We're usually going to have a technical person. Maybe it's a peer, probably an RVP or something like that. but give them a heads up. We want to keep people prepared to think thoughtfully about a recent win, and being able to describe that, and we're not trying to trick people, right? We want to be fair to people.
No, and that's fair, right? I mean, I think what you'll get by giving them the heads up is, so if you don't give them the heads up, you'll probably get fine answers, but you might not get the realest of the real answer of what truly is the best deal that they've ever closed, right? If you ask me that off the cuff, right? When you said that, when you asked that question, I started thinking in my head, I was like, what's the best deal? And then 2 or 3 minutes later, I was like, I kind of landed on what I would probably communicate, versus the first 1 or 2 that came to my mind. I could have talked about a deal.
And the counterpoint was, well, you're giving them too much of an advantage to come up and make the perfect. Hey, guess what? If they do their research and they work hard to really think through a deal and document all the elements of that deal, what does that tell me about that person? They're preparing, they're doing research, they know how to tell a story, they're going to be passionate about it because they know their content. Just like if you learn a technology, it's easy to be passionate about it because you actually understand it. So it's a great indicator, right? Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned, Nick, you mentioned the orgs all over the world. What have, obviously I think days off help, but like, how do you help? What are things you're doing, especially in this digital environment, of keeping the team connected?
Well, I mean, so we've been distributed. It's been part of our DNA since day one. We have people in 44 countries around the world, over 3,000 people. And the resources have been in place, from day one. Something that I've loved here, I mean, all our execs are extremely accessible. You look at Ash, as our CEO, or Shai as our founder. Talk to Janesh, our CFO and COO, Michael, our CRO, like across the board. It's, as much as it's a big company, it's also very flat, where anybody in the world can just reach out and say, hey, I need help on this. And people are extremely responsive and want to help. So we have the right systems, the right tools. I onboarded in the tail end of COVID, when, at least in Canada, things were still shut down. You couldn't really travel. And I felt part of the team from day one. It was really connected. You end up staring at a screen quite a bit, but we're really set up to be distributed, and we keep people well connected. Even our onboarding. I think one of our my new hire class had something like 430 people in it. Yeah, 430 people in the new hire class. It's incredible. Wow. The company does a great job at getting people together, welcome them to the company. Just before I started, I got this great little welcome box with all this elastic swag in it, and just a nice note. And it was, you just feel part of something. And that, like, all the nice little touches from when you join, to the messages, to the hundreds of welcome notes that you get from folks welcoming you to the team, the Slack groups. There's just so many tools to keep people connected that, you realize after a few weeks, wow, I actually haven't left my chair, but I feel like I've made all these new friends around the world. So at least that's been the experience for me. I actually haven't even met some of my team yet after a few months. And yet I feel like I know them pretty well.
I've got to chime in as the elastic old timer, so to speak, on this on this podcast today. One of my favorite things about Elastic, prior to COVID, the 3 years that I was here, was how we united the cluster, as we like to say. So we would do sales kickoffs, and how family focused. I brought my wife and daughter to sales kickoff in Paris, France, and that was welcomed. And there was lots of other spouses doing that. I did an engineer all hands in Dublin, brought my wife and my 2 boys, and many other families were there. It was a part of Elastic culture. Yeah, there were nights where, like, hey, this is just internal to Elastic. Feel free to be a tourist. But then there were nights where we were like, okay, we're going to do a little bit of a dinner with smaller teams, and you can bring your significant other. I've done Berlin. I did I think a global all hands in Berlin, where we brought everyone together. And again, I've just brought my wife on that trip. And then there were other events that I didn't, like we did a global all hands in Orlando, Florida. It was like, man, we're not doing that. I'm not. But guess what? That was my American view. All of our people in Asia and Europe, they were so excited that we did an event there, and they brought their families, right? It's just different culturally, regionally, and they brought them there. So that was one of my favorite things about Elastic, how we always found an excuse, whether from an engineering perspective, a sales perspective, or a whole company perspective, got everyone together. And that's obviously trailed off like all companies due to COVID. So I'm excited to see how we come out of this and how we re-implement or change those things that we used to do together pretty often. About every 6 months it was.
And Kevin, a good thing to reinforce that is, I'd encourage anybody to go to our website, elastic.co. And if you look at our leadership team, a lot of companies have the executive overviews and it's all these Photoshop perfect pictures. This is all pictures of our execs with their families, with their spouses, with their kids, wearing like jeans and a t-shirt and a baseball cap somewhere. It's really reflective of our culture, which is very, very family focused.
Yeah. My first time I went to club, probably 120 people at club or something like that at that time. I would guess that there was probably 10 sellers who didn't have families there. I was one of them. Huge mistake. I have 5 kids, should have brought them. But like everybody, all the execs, all the top sellers in the company got their kids and their spouses with them. And I was like, oh, what a swing and a miss. I really should have talked to some people. But that is a great example of the culture. Just family friendly.
Love it. Love it. Last question we ask every team that comes on. And this is the business that we're in of sales transparency and quota attainment transparency. Would you show a sales candidate that's interviewing with Elastic your CRM/quota attainment dashboard in an interview?
They ask the right questions. I don't see why not. I mean, it's showing you don't want to sell somebody and bait and switch. Especially, this is for me, one of the things I've loved most in leadership roles is creating jobs. When you can create jobs, the most rewarding thing in the world. And when somebody leaves a company to come work with you, if you sell them on something, they come on board and they discover it's not what they signed up for. First of all, day one, that's a huge, horrible experience. And it just demotivates the seller. And it's not a win-win. I prefer to kind of say, look, this is what it's like. Or, hey, this is what attainment looks like. This is what the territory looks like. Because what it also does is it not only sets the right expectations, but if the candidate's not the right person for the company, and they look at it and they say, wow, this looks like it's going to be kind of hard, and they opt out, then it just means that it probably wasn't the right person for the company. And we're going to bring in somebody who's going to be with us for the long term. So I truly believe in that transparency.
Awesome.
I would just say that I've never done that, but I've definitely had conversation. I'm pretty transparent just by my nature of sort of the trajectory of the business, or whether that's an individual branch of service, the Navy or the Marine Corps, just sort of like, hey, here's where the business started 3 years ago. Here's kind of the progression of the business. Here's the rate of growth. Like, I'm pretty transparent about sharing those kind of things because you're now talking about a very specific patch, which they are typically experts in, right? In my line of business, right?
Great. Appreciate you both coming on.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
So many good nuggets in there. I took notes.
Good stuff. I know Darin's still thinking about the 4-day work week. So
thank you for the opportunity, and really glad to learn all about RepVue, and super exciting what you all are doing. It's awesome. Thanks so much.
Yep. Thanks
for coming on. Another episode of the RepVue Podcast.